Hello, and welcome to the HIPAA Insider Show, where we delve into all things HIPAA and cloud security. I'm your host, Adam Zenedine. Before we dive in, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with anyone interested in healthcare and cloud security. I'm joined today by the CTO and founder of HIPAA Vault, Gil Vidals. Hey, Gil.
Hey, Adam, looking forward to today's podcast.
Me too, and we're going to be diving into an important topic today, and the title of the topic is From Simple Sites to Secure Solutions, Navigating HIPAA-Compliant Hosting versus Regular Hosting. So yeah, it's going to be a meaty topic to get into, Gil. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready to go. I'm ready.
All right, awesome. Okay, so let's start with a little bit about HIPAA. Gil, what's HIPAA, if you don't mind, and why does considering HIPAA when it comes to hosting matter?
Okay, yeah, good question. And it's good to start with the basics, because sometimes, time goes by, we forget the basics. It's good to review them. So HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which the federal government set up to ensure that a person's patient information is protected. Interesting is when that act first came out, I don't remember the exact year, but when it first came out, people were like, another regulation, we're not going to pay attention to it. So they did something called the High-Tech Act, which means there's going to be fines if the HIPAA Act isn't followed. So it is serious business. If there's patient information that's leaked out, then there are fines that are imposed. So people have to care about it now because of the fines. And when it comes to the hosting platform that you're asking about, well, that's where the patient data is stored. That's the golden egg. That's what we have to protect. So the hosting's important because everything's out on the cloud these days, and you have to be very mindful of where the data is and how it's protected. And that includes HIPAA compliant services like data transmission, storage, and access management.
Yeah, and okay, so I've got a follow-up question on that, and it probably leads on to the next topic. How would a website owner or developer know whether they need to consider HIPAA compliant hosting or not for their website or application or whatever?
Yeah, that's important. So a business owner, business manager has to determine if their healthcare app is going to need to follow the HIPAA regulations. So the rule of thumb is that if you're going to be handling protected health information, PHI, that's patient records, then you need to be following the HIPAA guidelines. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't have to be deep and extensive information. It could be as simple as you have an app, let's say, that monitors a person's blood pressure and basic heart rate, just some basic things like that. Well, that is still qualifies as personal health information, protected health information, PHI. So in that case, you would still have to follow that.
Okay. So if there's PHI, then HIPAA compliant hosting is needed. And then if there's no PHI, then you could probably go with, what's termed regular hosting. So could you give us a brief kind of idea of what regular hosting is in the day-to-day for the listeners and viewers versus what a HIPAA compliant hosting provider would look like?
Sure. From the business point of view, let's start with the non-technical. A regular non-protected health information provider can just take your credit card, start hosting, and off you go to the races. Whereas a HIPAA compliance service is going to first make sure that you have certain documents signed, including the business associate agreement. And that's an important document. That BAA, as we call it, should be signed between the hosting provider and the customer that has the healthcare application. And essentially that document describes the relationship between the two. So that's one difference that's not technical. Technical differences would be a regular non-protected provider doesn't have to worry about encryption at rest. And by that, I mean, if the virtual machine is powered off, there's no requirement that the powered off system and the data be encrypted, whereas a HIPAA provider does have to ensure it's encrypted at rest and also in transit. So those are a couple ones I'd like to highlight, and also backup and disaster recovery. Now, most hosting providers are going to give you backup, so that's not anything new. I think what would be different with a HIPAA compliant provider is that the backups should cover enough time. So it can't just be 1 or 2 days of backups. You have to be able to go further back. And that's important in order to keep the integrity of the system. Make sure you have enough backups that go back enough, far back enough in history. And then physical security. The hosting provider has to have physical security, which is many times when you say security, that's what people think of. They think of web cameras, and they think of access cards to go in the data center. All those things are necessary as well.
Great. Okay, so at this point, I think this is going to be an overview episode, Gil. Listeners and viewers, I'd encourage you, any of those points, data encryption, business associate agreements, backup, disaster recovery, any of those that Gil just mentioned, if you want to dive deeper into them, do check out our previous episodes where we have done more deep dives into those specific topics. And while you're at it, like the video and share it if you think it's going to be useful to someone else, and spread the word. Okay, Gil, so moving on so we've defined what HIPAA compliant hosting is versus a regular hosting. What about at the stage where a business owner has identified that they need a HIPAA compliant web presence, but they're looking to identify how the scaling is going to happen from like a simple marketing website to a more complex application? How do you determine what you need from a simple website all the way up to a more complex application?
Yeah, so in the industry of hosting, there's a term called brochureware, and that essentially means just like a brochure in the old days, you flip through the brochure, see pretty pictures, and it's just informational. And some websites are like that today. Let's say you're a dentist, for example. Dentists may just have a brochure type site where they're just showing pictures of people before and after their teeth are straight and their address and a map, but they're not collecting any information from their constituents. So that would be at the simplest level, and that's a very basic site. You don't need much bandwidth or resources like RAM and CPU and so forth. But as you go up to the next level, where it's not just brochure, where you may have a patient portal or a web application of some kind where there's interaction between the patients, the end users, and the platform. So in that case, you have some kind of a back-end application. Examples of this would be like telemedicine, right? Where you sign into an application, and next thing you know, you're seeing a doctor and you're telling him what your ailment is. So that would be considered a much more sophisticated one. So what do you do as you grow and you have more traffic and a more sophisticated application? You have to have a lot of times a way for your resources to grow along with it. And the architecture of your platform, of the platform where you're hosting, begins to matter. So we could go into the nitty gritty, but suffice it to say for now that you have to have the appropriate architecture for your application. And by that, I mean, if you have a lot of traffic, that's one dimension. But the other one, even if you don't have a lot of traffic, but you have a complex application that requires a lot of CPU and RAM and other resources, then you have to think about that. So I would say those are the principal things that people should consider.
Yeah, and as that scales, I'm assuming that the cost can scale with it as well. So can you talk a little bit about what the cost considerations are when it comes to HIPAA compliant hosting from different aspects of security, but then also the infrastructure that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think at the low end, if you see, again, brochureware where it's just static content, that's something that a GoDaddy might cost you $30 to $40. And people should know this as well. Don't get fooled by even the standard hosting. You'll see hosting for $3, But when you sign up for those accounts, you'll notice that Oh, you want an email box? Okay, that's $4 more. Oh, you wanted more disk space? That's another $10. So the real cost after you sign up is closer to, $30, $40, $50 a month. So even the brochureware, you can expect to pay at least that much. And if it's in a HIPAA compliant host, you're looking at least $100 a month. And I would say the mid range is about $500 if you have a mid range system or application that you're going to be looking at, below $1,000. And then the enterprise,
maybe slightly beyond brochureware.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for example, if let's say you had a website that you're selling to your patients certain items via e-commerce, and you have a WooCommerce site with WordPress. That's a good example of a medium one where you have some traffic, but the WooCommerce itself is a heavy plugin. By heavy, I mean it requires a decent amount of resources, both on the database and the application. So WooCommerce with WordPress might be edging up toward the middle tier. So you have to consider how complex your application is, as well as how much traffic it's going to be getting, and make sure that you have the right amount of resources. Of course, your provider like HIPAA can help you determine, well, what is the appropriate level for my app.
What should our listeners and viewers most look out for when they're researching the right HIPAA compliant hosting provider?
Yeah, I think there's something that's very important that's really not technical. And I think the listeners will appreciate what I'm about to say. And that is when you're consuming a service, a digital service in particular, which most of us are digital citizens, right? Everything we do is online now. But in this case in particular, when you're dealing with an important healthcare application that you're generating revenue from, it's your business source of income, that you need to have someone that's going to be your teammate. In other words, don't go just strictly on the price, or if it's a slick platform. I mean, are you going to be able to call these people? Like if you have an issue, you're going to be able to get on the phone and say, hey, can we get on a meeting? I need to talk to somebody. We're having some kind of an issue and we need some help. So that is something I think is really important, because if you do get into crisis mode, or not even crisis mode, but even planning mode, you want to see, can I talk to somebody on the other side, on the not just fill out a form and I'll email you, in a week or so, or in a day or so, but somebody that you can actually schedule a meeting, have a conversation. And I think that's important. Now, if you're just starting off and you have brochureware and it's something very simple, then what I just said probably isn't as important. But as you move up the scale and you have an application that's growing in importance to you and to your organization, then you're going to want to make sure that you can do that. Now, how do you test that? This is interesting, because of course, when you're talking to somebody, they always tell you, oh, of course we'll help you. I mean, everybody's going to say yes. But the way you can test it out is if you can't meet with the sales team, like you can't even get a call with the sales team because you want to spend your money, then the support team is going to be terrible. So test it in the sales process. If you cannot get a hold of the sales guy to give him your money, then guaranteed 99% chance the support's going to suck as well. Now, if you get past the first level and you're able to talk to somebody on sales and they seem very responsive, then say, hey, can I talk to one of the resolution or solution engineers? We have some technical questions. If they join a call schedule, then it's like, oh, okay, these people seem to be available. They seem to be joining meetings, and it seems to be pretty good. So that's how you can, in a practical way, find out if you're going to have some good experiences there with support.
Yeah, no, they're all great points. Whenever I'm doing business on a personal level, I always want to look out for is the person that I'm doing business with of a similar size to me, and wherever that's possible, then I'll try and go for that provider, just because, like you said, there's that personal touch.
Right. And what last point I'd like to say is that too, the time zone matters. So if you're in the Midwest and you're trying to talk to an engineer and you find out all their engineers are in India or the Philippines, then it would be difficult from a time perspective to be able to hook up a meeting. So, those are all important considerations, I think, when you're looking to have a long-lived partnership. You want to start off with the right foot, and you want to make sure that you're comfortable with that environment and that it seems to fit your business model.
Yeah, definitely. All right, great. Well, so we've covered a fair bit today. Gil, anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we covered the most important points, and I do encourage our audience, if they have any questions or they want to ask something about their app or something, we'd be happy to join on a call and do a review with them.
All right, yeah, link in the description for all info on HIPAA Vault and how to get in touch with HIPAA Vault. So yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening today. We explored HIPAA compliant hosting, how it differs from regular hosting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on your experiences with HIPAA compliant hosting, if you've had any. If not, and you're just looking to get into a HIPAA compliant setup, let us know what the most important aspects are for you. You can leave a comment. You can leave a comment below, and yeah, we'll get back to you. And remember, if your organization handles PHI, it's crucial to choose a hosting provider that offers security, privacy, and compliance that you need to stay HIPAA compliant. So thanks for tuning in today, and until next time, stay safe and stay secure.